Dirty Bird podcast contains foul language and is not appropriate for young fledglings. Listener discretion is advised. Our intro music is brought to you by Ricky Pistone, aka Dick Piston. And our outro music is brought to you by the Sidewalk Slammers. Check them out wherever you get your music.
Are you looking for a podcast today with ornithology and humor you crave? Well, I know all these guys and it's birds they like. It's Dirty Bird, yeah, they're just a couple guys who really like birds. It's Dirty Bird, yeah, they're pretty dirty, but they really like birds.
Hello, and welcome to Dirty Bird Podcast, a podcast that's serious about birds, but nothing else. I'm Dr. John, and in each episode, I pick an individual bird species and tell you everything you need to know about it. I like to record outside. Today, I'm recording from the beautiful woods of Buckhannon, West Virginia. There's a peewee joining me right now, which is kind of cool. Hopefully, we get some more cool bird sounds. We will not be hearing the subject of today's episode, the Anhinga. The Anhinga, as we'll talk about, is a bird of freshwater, like big rivers and stuff like that, of the South, not of West Virginia. But before I launch into talking about the Anhinga, just want to say sorry for missing a May episode, but today is a very special episode because we are going to break a Dirty Bird record and cover 4 bird species in one episode. 4 species! So I said the Anhinga, also called the darter. There's 4 darter species. It's known as the Anhinga in the Americas. They are the only members of the family Anhingidae. This isn't really a listener-suggested episode. I have tons of listener-suggested episodes lined up, but Meg did suggest, listener Meg, thank you. She did suggest that I do an episode on cormorants, and as we'll talk about in the evolution section, Anhingas are related to cormorants, so sorry, Meg, I'm sort of doing your suggestion. So in this episode, we'll be talking everything you need to know about the Anhinga, or the American darter. Also, we'll cover the Oriental darter, the African darter, and the Australasian darter. But before I dive into that, pun intended, let's do this episode's Birdwatch. This comes from listener Jessica S., who sent me the morning chorus from her backyard in Iredell County, North Carolina. That's such a beautiful dawn chorus, Jessica. I hear some northern cardinals, of course, sounding like a siren or ambulance alarm. I also hear Carolina chickadees doing their nice Phoebe. Yeah, I hear an eastern towhee doing its shwee slurring call. And, of course, some crows, too. Listeners, please send me your bird notes. Just, it can be in writing or a voice memo. Just what birds you've been checking out recently, or a cool birding experience, whatever you want. I'll play it in the show. I need one for the first episode. So unless you want me to skip another month, come on, give me a bird note. Also, a shout out to Milko, who provided the Anhinga photo for this episode's cover art. Check out the episode description for a link to Milko's Instagram page where you can see all his amazing wildlife photos. And finally, one last shout out. This one goes to all the wonderful staff at Stonewall Jackson Memorial Hospital. This one's for you guys.
America's bird, fuck yeah!
So anyway, let's go back to talking about this episode's birds, the darters. So to describe these birds, darters are nicknamed snake birds, and when you see them swimming underwater, it's very obvious why. They have small heads with sharp, skinny, pointed bills attached to a long S-shaped neck. When underwater, that long neck is stretched out searching for fish and makes them seem like a sea snake. They are pretty big birds, measuring up to 3 feet in length. Their plumage is similar to cormorants with mostly dark or brown feathers, especially in the males who are darker colored compared to the females, who tend to have paler bodies. The females are also larger than the males. Along the tops of their wings, darters have lighter colored feathers, sometimes gray or white. Similar to penguins and other swimming birds, darters have short legs that are set far back on their body, and their feet are completely webbed. Really, the only other bird you're going to confuse these guys with is cormorants, but the S-shaped neck, the tiny head, and the sharp-pointed bill of the Anhingas is how you will instantly tell them apart. If you look really close, you will notice their bill is serrated on the sides like a bread knife. Cormorants also have a hook on their bill that darters do not. And if you look really, really close to that bill, you will notice that they do not have nostrils. Anhingas don't have noses. A handful of other birds like cormorants, boobies, and gannets also don't have external nostrils, but this is definitely a weird thing in the bird world, as a vast majority of species have nostrils. Cormorants and Anhingas appear to have evolved closed nostril holes to avoid water getting in while they are submerged and swimming. Gannets and boobies, they also don't have nostrils. They evolved those closed nostrils to prevent water entry during their dives from flight into the water after prey, rather than like prolonged time submerged underwater. The tail is another way to tell cormorants and darters apart. Darters have long wedge-shaped tails. Think of it more as like a underwater specialist than, as we'll learn, Anhingas are a bit more like underwater specialists than the cormorants are. They're almost like the submarines of the bird world. So think of that tail of the Anhinga being like a rudder. They got that wedge tail like a rudder underwater. And when surfacing on the water, Anhingas will just have that long snaky neck and head out of the water. Their bodies pretty much stay submerged. This is useful to tell them apart from cormorants, ducks, and geese. Honestly, they look like Nessie when they're out of the water. They can fly, although they are short distance flyers and they're pretty awkward. As we'll learn about, their bodies are relatively heavy compared to other birds of similar size, meaning that they have high wing loading. This is an aeronautical term that basically means Anhingas have to flap hard and fast to be able to overcome gravity and lift off. They need a pretty long runway to take off from, similar to cormorants. You'll see them flapping and kicking furiously over the water until they finally become airborne. Once airborne, though, Anhingas are surprisingly graceful. Unlike ducks and cormorants who are constantly pumping their wings to remain airborne when they fly, Anhingas do sort of like a flap, flap, flap glide, similar to hawk flight, actually. They will even sometimes use thermals to soar and power their flight with minimal flapping. They've been described as looking like a cross while in flight because their neck is held straight out, their wings make a remarkable right angle with their neck, and then their tail is held straight out behind them. I guess if we're talking using the lingo of Gen Z, Anhingas do a T-pose when they're in flight. Oh man, I sound so old saying that. When not flying or swimming, they often are found sunning themselves on tree branches, either submerged trees sticking out of the water or trees close to the water. Although they have webbed feet, they have surprisingly strong grips, and the African darter is even known to roost on power lines. I'll just give a brief summary of some distinction in the appearance of the individual species, but really they all look very similar, and it's more of a geographical location that marks them as separate species. All of them have yellow bills, and in general their eye color is red for the America Anhinga and yellow for the Old World darters, although there are some red-eyed Old World species. The American darter or Anhinga is the most darkly colored out of the four species, with males being a glossy black. Females are bicolored with a gray or brown buff along its chest and then black along the rest. The American darter is also the smallest of the four darter species. The Oriental darter has gray or rufous-colored necks with a pale line running from their eye down to their neck, giving them a striped appearance. Their black bodies are also striped with a lot of white lines. They are the least sexually dimorphic of the darters, with males and females looking extremely similar, with just some size differences in the bill. The African darter looks almost exactly like the American darter with its glossy black body. However, it has a very prominent white stripe along the sides of its neck, which contrasts nicely with its black and rufous-colored neck. The Australasian darter is sort of the cutest darter that there is. This is typical of Australia. I feel like either an animal is super cute like a koala, or it's going to kill you like a giant saltwater crocodile. There's no in-between in Australia. Cute or killer. The Australasian darter male has the typical dark plumage of darters, but it also has a very broad, distinctive white stripe along the side of its neck that contrasts with its orange-yellow bill. The white stripe looks similar to that of the African darter, but it's broader. The females are very fashionable with snow white bellies and a thin black neck stripe. One last comment on Anhinga looks. You may notice a silvery shine on the wing coverts. That's like the white or the gray part along the top of the wings, particularly when they have these wings spread out in the sun. Analysis of Anhinga feathers suggests that a combination of glossy black melanocytes in the feathers capped with a complex keratin structure that reflects light, creating the appearance of white. Remember, white is just a reflection of all spectrum of color. Results in these two colors combining to produce the silver. I always think it's so cool how sometimes colors, like, they aren't actual like pigments, like it's not like the actual like true color pigment there. It's just the way that the light is being reflected by the structure that's causing our eye to interpret it as that specific color. Super cool and kind of esoteric and trippy, I guess. Like, I feel like you need to smoke a joint and listen to some Pink Floyd to really appreciate that. So for the range and habitat of these four species, the American darter, it's found year-long along the Gulf Coast of the U.S., along the coast of Mexico and Mesoamerica, down into northern South America. It's found pretty extensively across northern South America. It's also found in the Caribbean islands. The American darter is a short-distance migrant, and during summers will venture up the coastal southern U.S. It's becoming more and more common in the Chesapeake Bay. With global climate change and warming waters, its range north has been expanding. It has even been sighted venturing as far up as New York. The Oriental darter is found in South Asia and Southeast Asia, including India, Thailand, Vietnam, and Malaysia. The African darter is found throughout sub-Saharan Africa and in Madagascar. And the Australasian darter is found throughout coastal Australia and along waterways. It's also found in New Guinea and several island chains that surround Australia. Uncommonly, it will pop up in Tasmania. Darters are not birds of the open ocean and prefer to feed in freshwater streams, rivers, and ponds. And you'll find them in lakes, too. You may find them also in brackish water lagoons. Actually, kind of my story about Anhingas is when my wife and I were in Key West. It was actually really cool. I forget which key we were staying on, but we were staying on a sailboat that had a bed in it and was moored out in this, lagoon. And we would take a little rowboat to get to the sailboat, which was pretty fun, honestly. But anyway, they also had some like kayaks and stuff we could use. So I remember we were kayaking around these like mangrove, lagoons and wetlands there, and the water is just crystal clear and beautiful. And I remember seeing an Anhinga come underneath the kayak, and it was just so cool. Like, honestly, I did think it was a snake at first, because the first thing you see is that neck, and then it darted by, and it was just amazing to look at. There's not much to talk about with their vocalizations. Anhingas aren't songbirds and so lack a sophisticated syrinx. Their calls are mostly croaks and clicks, like this American darter calling from its nest. The American darter is known to make a sort of gurgling call. I've seen it described as sounding like a treadle-operated sewing machine. They seem to give this call as a greeting call, especially around their nest. The African darter gives a very yappy call. And the Australasian darter's call almost sounds like an actual songbird. I mean, there's a little clicky call, but there's this nice down slur at the end. The Oriental darter sounds nearly identical to the Australasian darter. So the name Anhinga is such a cool name. You'll see all over the internet that Anhinga comes from the Tupi people of Brazil. They're a Native American group. And you'll see it attributed that it means devil bird. However, as I tried to research Tupi legends about the Anhinga, I came up blank. What I did find was a very interesting WordPress article by a guy named Lev Michael, who writes a lot about Amazonian languages, and he noticed that if he translates devilbird and snakebird into the Tupi language, they're nothing like the word Anhinga. However, there is the Tupi religious belief of Anhinga, not Anhinga, Anhinga, and that refers to an evil spirit of the woods, basically a devil figure, that often appears in the forms of various animals and weather phenomena and torments souls of the dead that are not prepared correctly for burial or were evil in life. Lev Michael makes an interesting conjecture that Anhinga, being referred to the bird, could have just been from early missionaries or naturalists hearing the Tupi people refer to the American darter as a form of the Anhinga, likely when it gave its ghastly sounding call. Because the Tupi people with their Anhinga legend do say like thunder is the Anhinga, or like any unpleasant like sound that you hear is the Anhinga. So maybe like an Anhinga was giving its like ghastly sounding call, and a naturalist was like, oh well, what is that? And they were like, that's Anhinga, of course. And then they said, oh, Anhinga, oh okay, that bird, oh that's what it's called, oh it's the devil, oh okay, so you call this the devil bird. So it just could be a big assumption. If this is true, it's crazy that the entire family of these birds is named after a misunderstanding of a Native American word for a species. It's as if a bird family was called like Saturnidae or Luciferidae. Also, this is a false fact that has been repeated in pretty much every source I read, including scientific articles. Almost all of them begin with Anhinga, named for the Tupi word for devil. So I don't know. I mean, maybe somebody out there knows more about, the Brazilian Tupi people and if this is actually true. But to go into the scientific names of the individual species, the American darter, usually just called Anhinga, has a very unexciting scientific name of Anhinga. Both genus and species name are the same, makes it pretty easy. When you're out and you see one, you can go, oh yes, Anhinga, yes, scientific and genus name, and sound very educated, or like an asshole, I guess. And the American darter pretty much typifies the entire Anhinga family. The three other Anhinga species all have the genus name Anhinga. The Oriental darter's scientific name is Anhinga melanogaster. Melanogaster is a combination of the ancient Greek word melon for black and gaster for belly, so it just means black belly. This is sort of a dumb scientific name because all of the Anhinga species, the males at least, have black bellies. The African darter is Anhinga rufa, rufa being the Latin name for red, referring to the red coloring of its neck. Again, this is a non-specific species name because, as we just talked about, the other Anhinga species also have some red coloring on their necks. Finally, the Australasian Anhinga has a mouthful of a scientific name, Anhinga novae hollandiae. This is probably the best species name, in my opinion, for the Anhingas because it referred to New Holland, which was the original name for Australia. Well, not the original name. I'm sure the Aboriginal people had their own name for their land. But Australia was actually first encountered by Dutch sailors in 1606 by a guy named Willem Janszoon aboard his ship, the Buckhannon, which means little dove in Dutch. I sort of threw that in so I could kind of make fun of the Dutch with their pronunciations. Willem Janszoon. Oh, what's that Austin Powers quote about the Dutch? There's a few things I hate in this world. Something and the Dutch. There's a couple colloquial names for Anhingas. These include, as we said, snakebird, but also water turkey. This is a nickname in the southern U.S. Its plumage sort of makes them look like a turkey when they are puffed up drying and sitting on a stick in the river. And that snakebird term, it seems to be, across all the species, from the Americas to Asia. It's impossible for people not to see the similarity of this bird and a snake. So let's talk about the feeding behavior of these birds. All the species have a similar feeding behavior, so I'm just sort of going to speak about them in general. But I'll point out anything unique to certain species. They're mainly fish-eating birds, and they have some really cool biological adaptations for their piscivore diet. So first is that S-shaped neck. The neck of the Anhinga is like a spring ready to uncoil and lunge out at prey. The cervical vertebrae 3 through 8 are elongated, with vertebrae 8 lying entirely horizontal to form that S-curve. Vertebrae 9 is shortened and serves as an anchor point for a strong fibrous tissue bundle called the bridge of Donitz. This fibrous bridge, coupled with various strong neck muscles, quickly converts static energy into kinetic energy, allowing the Anhinga to dart its neck forward lightning fast to spear fish. Rather than biting its prey to catch it like hooked-bill cormorants, darters will use their sharp, slender bill to stab directly into fish. The serrated sides keep the fish from escaping off the bill, like barbs of a fishing hook. After spearing fish, Anhingas will surface and toss the fish off their beak and into the air, then gobble it down head first. They will also sometimes bring the fish to shore to manipulate it and then swallow it head first, especially if it's a bigger fish. Their feathers are also a big part of their feeding strategy. Their feathers are not waterproof. This keeps them from holding onto air bubbles when the darters are submerged and makes them less buoyant and more fish-like so that they can easily swim underwater as they pursue prey. Remember, I called them the submarines of the bird world. It's totally true. They're like, dive, 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 and go down. Anhingas lack a uropygeal gland. That's the oil-producing gland many birds have that they use to clean their feathers and also makes their feathers waterproof, among a lot of other functions like antimicrobial functions. If you want to learn more about uropygeal glands, definitely check out my hoopie episode. That bird has some serious skunk glands. Their bones are also not as pneumatized as other birds. I think in my bird bods episode I talked about this in depth, but basically birds have air sacs in their bones that are involved in their respirations and also help them have lighter body weights for flight. Anhingas have less pneumatized and denser bones, which helps them be less buoyant and therefore sink into water. Their hunting strategy is to fully submerge in the water and slowly prowl for fish. They are ambush hunters who rely on surprising fish and stalking slow-moving fish species, and then spearing them with a lightning-quick thrust of their beak. Totally different hunting behavior from birds like the loon that we've talked about on the show, that actively chase down their prey. In fact, direct comparison of the metabolic rates and O2 consumption of Anhingas compared to cormorants show that cormorants are sort of like the long-distance runners of the bird world that have increased amounts of oxygen-bound proteins in their muscles that allow them to perform aerobic, meaning oxygen-consuming metabolism during their hunting. Anhingas, though, being ambush predators doing quick, lightning-fast strikes, they're more like sprinters that just ate an energy gel pack. They use glycolytic metabolism, splitting of sugars that doesn't need oxygen and can happen really rapidly for their metabolism in hunting. So Anhingas use short, quick bursts of energy for their ambush attacks, while a lot of other bird species are, cormorants especially in this study, are using more aerobic metabolism like long-distance runners do. Anhingas' waterlogged feathers result in them having to dry out their feathers a lot. You'll often see Anhingas perched on riverbanks or fallen down tree branches with their wings held straight out to help them dry. This is called wing spreading. They will also shake themselves like a dog to wring out water and fan their wings to move around air to help their wings dry faster. Wing spreading is also used to warm birds on cold days or after swimming in cold water. Check out my vulture episode. I talk about wing spreading in that too, which is for warming. Anhingas can fly straight out of the water without drying, but it's pretty difficult for them. Anhingas have pretty small heads and their eyes are set way to the sides. This means most of their vision is monocular. They can't really look at stuff with both eyes at once. In fact, compared to other diving birds, they have a very minimal binocular visual field. Objects have to be pretty much right in front of their bill for them to see with both eyes. Evolutionarily, this is thought to be because Anhingas mostly hunt in murky, tropical, shallow freshwater streams and ponds. They don't need great depth perception, as anything they're going to be able to spot in the murky water is close enough for them to snatch. And then their binocular vision is right in front of their bill, so really they only need depth perception when they're tossing those fish up in the air to, then gobble them down. While they mainly feed on fish, darter's stomach contents have been found to contain shrimp, sponges, seeds, and aquatic grasses also. They are also known to skewer frogs to eat. Anhingas appear to play with sticks and other objects, usually tossing them and catching them again. I've talked about bird play in the show before in my frigate bird episode. Shout out to Phoenix again, who won a t-shirt for remembering that episode. Play in animals, just like in humans, helps build important life skills. In the Anhinga's case, the tossing and catching of sticks likely helps prepare them for tossing speared fish in the air and catching them in their mouths. The American darter has been observed tossing sticks into the air and catching them. Also, in 2018, outside of Sydney, Australia, on the Parramatta River, an Australasian darter was observed snapping sticks off a fallen tree it was perched on and watching them intently as it dropped them in the water. It also picked up floating seed pods and tossed them in the air to catch again. It reminds me of like a kid dropping rocks in a pond just to watch the ripples. Hell, not even a kid. I do that all the time. If I'm at a body of water, I'm going to throw some rocks in it. Also, the way they toss and catch sticks and seed pods reminds me of someone playing catch with themselves. All this practice pays off. Anhingas are extremely proficient hunters. Studies with captive Anhingas found that they can catch 3 to 5 fish in a period of 5 to 10 minutes. Gathering food this quickly allows them to devote a lot of their time to roosting and wing spreading. Their long periods of roosting help them conserve energy until they need to feed again. They're sort of just like binge-eating birds, They go, they hunt, they get their food, they gobble it down, and then they just spend the rest of the day just like vegging out on a log, warming in the sun. Sounds like a pretty nice life. I mean, hell, they live in the tropics, so yeah, they have a great life. So let's talk about their breeding. Similar to the feeding section, all the darter species are pretty similar in their breeding. I'll sort of give generalizations about their breeding and point out any notable difference. All species have some plumage differences in the breeding season, with various patches or stripes becoming more prominent and colored. Birds occurring in the more northern latitudes will breed in the spring, whereas those that are found in the tropics, where the seasons really don't change, will really breed any time of the year. Anhingas do only have one brood per year, though. They engage in courtship rituals. The American Anhinga pairs will sit upright, extend their long necks out, and swing their heads back and forth. Darter pairs will also exchange twigs and rub bills to form and maintain their pair bond. American Anhingas can get pretty aggressive during the breeding season, particularly between males. They also may be aggressive towards each other to defend feeding areas, especially ones where fish may be limited, such as in ponds. In Brazil in 2011, outside Sao Paulo, a female Anhinga was observed routinely chasing off another female Anhinga that attempted to forage at the same pond as it. Darters are colony nesters and will form loose colonies that can number from just a few nests to hundreds. Sometimes they'll nest alongside other colonial nesting bird species like herons, egrets, ibises, storks, and cormorants. They build their nests in trees that are either right next to water or overhanging it. Australasian darters' nests may serve as a nuclei to attract nesting little pied cormorants and little black cormorants, as these two species only appear to nest in the close proximity of darters, in Western Australia at least. Bodhi trees appear to be a favorite nesting spot for colonies of Oriental darters. Those are like, they're called like nicknamed sacred trees, I think. If you Google Bodhi tree, you'll totally recognize it. They're like these huge trees with really rugated trunks and lots of overhanging limbs. They look super cool. Oddly enough, with the American darter at least, the male does nearly all the nest construction. He actually starts building the nest even before he has a mate. Nests are made of sticks that are then lined with vegetation. After the male has done most of the construction, the female will do the finishing touches. Really reminds me of moving into a home with my wife, I'll pull all the furniture in and stuff. And, I'm like, all right, we're done, and my wife is, doing the finishing touches, putting, pictures on the wall and the curtains and actual stuff that turns a house into a home. So yeah, the female Anhingas, they turn the nest house into a nest home. All darter species build nests out of twigs and line them with leaves and grass. They build their nests on flattened tree branches near water, like I said. They lay 2 to 5 eggs. Eggs are blue or kind of like an off-white, but are covered with a white chalky layer. Chemical analysis and electron microscopy shows that this chalky layer is composed of calcium carbonate spheres that are situated in a layer almost like a cloud over the pores of the eggs. In avian eggs, pores are important for gas and water exchange. It's theorized that the chalky layer acts as a protective barrier to prevent water entering the eggs and also may help prevent mechanical damage to the pores. They incubate their eggs for about a month, and then the nestling period is about 2 to 3 weeks. Incubation is done mainly by the female, while feeding is done mainly by the male. Anhingas lack brood patches, so to provide direct skin-to-egg contact, they will actually cover their eggs with their webbed feet. During nest turnovers or the arrival of a parent to the nest, they may repeat their courtship behaviors or give a greeting yawn display to each other. Sorry, a little bit of a breeze there. I read one heartbreaking story from India about a male Oriental darter that got his bill entangled in red cloth and could not provide food for his family. Unfortunately, it is so biologically ingrained in the mother that the male provides the food that she basically just watched the nestlings starve. If nests are left undisturbed, though, and the parents are healthy, the fledgling rate appears to be pretty high. I saw a very small study from 8 Oriental darter nests in Yamuna Biodiversity Park in India in 2011 that found a nearly 100% hatch chick to successful fledgling ratio. Darters take about 2 years to reach sexual maturity after leaving the nest. And to kind of end this part, I'll kind of go back to that bird aggression part. I found an observation from 2018 in Centennial Parklands outside Sydney, Australia, where a group of ravens were observed repeatedly confronting lone Australasian darters while they were just sunning themselves and minding their own business. The ravens avoided groups of darters but routinely bullied lone ones. It's possible they were doing this as an attempt to scare the Anhingas into regurgitating any caught fish so the ravens could kleptoparasitize them. And that's actually a good segue into our conservation section, I guess, to talk about predators of these birds and also threats that they face. Oh, what's that? Oh, that sounds like a brown thrasher. Yeah, notice how it's repeating everything in two-word phrases. Someone's mowing, but I hope that doesn't bother y'all. There's, so much great bird noise around us right now. I think this is the best bird calls during a recording I've had in a very long time. All right, so for the conservation section. Like a lot of water birds, the major threat to Anhingas is pollution and loss of their habitat. Development of wetlands is the main thing threatening all 4 species. Discarded fishing line is also a hazard. Also, their serrated bill with backwards-facing barbs. It's great for impaling fish and preventing fish from escaping from their bills, but it also makes them more prone to human-made material becoming lodged on their bill and difficult to remove. In South Africa, an African Anhinga was seen with steel wool enmeshed over its bill. In Sao Paulo, Brazil, between 2010 and 2015, 21 examples of Anhingas with human-made debris lodged in their bills were recorded. The objects ranged from rope to cloths to plastic debris. 17 of these birds were able to eventually free themselves of the debris after several days, but 4 of the birds died. Most of the Anhinga species appear to be doing pretty well with stable populations, but the Oriental darter is actually a near-threatened species. In addition to habitat loss, nests are still routinely raided for eggs and nestlings to use as a food source. Its population is estimated to be as low as 22,000 mature individuals and is declining. Oriental darters are also sometimes captured and trained to be used for fishing in Asia. This is a traditional fishing technique, which is mainly done with cormorants, but darters will sometimes be captured and used too. I feel like this is something you just have to look up a YouTube video of. Look up cormorant fishing. It's pretty crazy. Basically, birds are tied onto ropes to prevent them from swallowing fish, but they'll still be able to capture them in their mouths and hold them in their gullets. And then the fishermen will kind of pull them back up out of the water by the rope and then remove the fish from their gullets. There was a subspecies of African darter that occurred in Turkey, Iraq, and Israel called the Levant darter. But with the industrialization of Israel and Turkey, the subspecies nearly went extinct. Oil spills during the Gulf War further decimated the population, and for a while they were thought to actually be extinct. However, during the Iraq War, a small population was discovered in the Hawazeh marshes of Iraq. Bush may not have found his weapons of mass destruction when he invaded Iraq, but he did find a missing Anhinga subspecies, right? That makes it good, right? The American darter seems to be the most populous and widespread of the darters, with a population estimated at 2 million. I could not find reliable estimates of Australasian or African darter populations, but likely they number from a couple tens of thousands at the low end to around 100,000 on the high end. African and Asian bird species are severely understudied compared to those occurring in Europe and North America. The oldest known American darter was 12 years old when it was shot in Louisiana in 1948. Darters are prone to the common avian nest predators like crows and ravens. Adults and nestlings may be taken by predatory hawks or eagles. They share the waters with hungry crocodiles that have been known to prey on them. And in the Americas, alligators too. Like most fish-eating birds, darters are prone to intestinal parasites. I found a paper that examined the intestines of African darters collected in Ghana and found them infected with a variety of flatworms, one apparently being host-specific to Anhingas and is called Strigae Anhingae. All right, y'all, let's wrap up with the evolution section. In my research, I could literally do an entire episode on birds that have adapted to a mostly aquatic lifestyle, including discussion on the now extinct toothed Hesper ornithiformes, which evolved during the Cretaceous and had bills full of sharp, recurved teeth. Literally, they were like penguin dinosaurs. But anyway, multiple bird lineages have gone from terrestrial lifestyles to aquatic. Most aquatic birds evolved foot-propelled swimming like cormorants, loons, ducks, and anhingas. Two bird groups, penguins and puffins, are notable for evolving wing-propelled swimming. Check out my puffin episode. All these different groups evolved their aquatic traits independently in examples of convergent evolution. But let's focus on our anhingas and how they came to be. Anhingas belong to the order Suliformes. They previously used to be lumped into the Pelicanformes order before it was broken up. For more information on Pelicanformes, check out my brown pelican episode, my shoebill stork episode. I talk about the evolution of that family in there. Suliformes contains three families: Sulidae with gannets and boobies, Phalacrocoracidae that contains cormorants and shags, and then finally our Anhingidae family. Well, blue jays are pissed about something. I wonder if there's a snake or a hawk over there. Anhingas are a sister family to the cormorants. This comes as no surprise because they are very similar birds, but with different feeding styles and ecological niches. They differentiated about 25 million years ago during the early Miocene. Anhingas underwent a huge radiation during this time with many diverse species. This is particularly true of the Americas, where as early as 18 million years ago, fossils start popping up in Florida dating from the early Miocene. A number of now extinct species have been found in the Florida deposits. One, called Anhinga grandis, is pretty similar to modern American darters, except it had longer wings and less developed muscle attachments at the feet and legs, suggesting it was more adapted to soaring for long periods rather than perching. These prehistoric American Anhingas came in all shapes and sizes. Fossil deposits from South America dating from the late Miocene, which was around 5 to 11 million years ago, include Anhinga minuta, which was a tiny darter little more than half the size of the modern American Anhinga. And then these massive darters like Macrohinga paranensis, which was double the size and weight of the modern Anhinga. Interestingly, the bony morphology of this giant Anhinga suggests it had a different hunting style than the modern Anhingas, using its powerful big feet and leg muscles to chase and pursue prey, similar to modern cormorants rather than the stalking style of modern Anhingas. Anhinga minuta's small size may have allowed it to forage safely in waters containing and overhung with thick vegetation. It was able to weave through branches and trunks that larger Anhingas could not navigate. Just to illustrate for you the kind of world these prehistoric Anhingas were living in, alongside Macroanhinga and Anhinga minuta skeletons can be found the fossils of Perusaurus, the second largest crocodile to ever live, measuring at 36 feet long, and Stupidemes, a giant turtle whose shell alone was 6 feet long. Some Anhingas were giants too. There's an Anhinga fossil from Argentina dating from the Upper Miocene called Megalonyx ranzi that weighed 11 kilograms or almost 25 pounds. This massive Anhinga was almost certainly flightless. There's another one, Anhinga grandis, that, as the name suggests, was large in body size, and fossils of it have been found in Florida and Nebraska, possibly some in South America too. And it dates from the late Miocene, 5 to 11 million years ago. I was a little confused at this Nebraska Anhinga. I couldn't find much information on it. During this time period, Nebraska was warmer than it is today and also drier. It was more like an African savanna. That doesn't sound like ideal Anhinga habitat to me. But if anyone knows more about, Nebraska during the Miocene period, please write in and tell me how this Anhinga, had its ecological niche there. Anhinga fossils from the Old World predate the New World but are less diverse. There's Anhinga waterbolesi found in Australia and dating from 24 to 26 million years ago, making it the oldest Anhinga fossil. There are also several fragmentary Anhinga fossils found throughout Australia and Africa. The most prolific prehistoric Anhinga species of the Old World is Anhinga pannonica, which has been found at various sites in Europe, Asia, and Africa. It dates from 7 to 16 million years ago. This is interesting because Anhingas are not found in Europe currently, showing that the climate was warmer and more amenable to Anhingas there in the past. Based on the oldest fossil being found in Australia, it's hypothesized that the family has a southern origin, either Australia or Southeast Asia, and spread sort of in both directions, west to Europe and Africa and east to the Americas. In the Americas, it found freshwater habitats ripe for exploitation and filled many available niches that produce a plethora of species. With climatic shifts, these species gradually whittled down, going into the Pleistocene. Up until about 20,000 or 100,000 years ago, the Americas actually had two Anhinga species, our modern Anhinga and the now extinct Anhinga beckeri. Fossils of this extinct species have been found only in Florida, and it's theorized they specialized in nesting on barrier islands that were inundated with water after the end of the last ice age, causing their extinction. There's actually an argument to join the three Old World darter species. It depends if you're a lumper or a splitter. Do you like to just lump everything into one species or split it down into the minor details based on, one feather being a different color? I did read a mitochondrial study from 2019 out of the University of Colombo, Sri Lanka, and the University of Otago, Dunedin in New Zealand that dived into the mitochondrial genetics of darters. It found unequivocal support for the four distinct Anhinga species. The first split in the modern Anhinga family occurs between the common ancestor of the Old World darters and that of the American darter, which occurred 19 to 22 million years ago. The next is the Australasian darter, which separated from the other Old World darters at around 14 to 15 million years ago. There's a tufted titmouse, right by me, singing. This is so cool. He's super loud. The African darter and the Oriental darter are sister species with a divergence around 10 million years ago. There's described subspecies of each of the darter species, mainly based on geographical location and plumage differences. I saw one comment on the genomics of two American Anhinga subspecies that mentioned their genetic differences were negligible. So the lumper splitter argument there still has a hot debate, but with a subspecies, I guess. But as far as the four species of Anhinga, it seems, genetics confirms that they are different species. So lumpers, shut up. And I know my evolution section can kind of be convoluted. So just to summarize darter evolution, they come from a group of birds that contains fish-eating and diving specialists like boobies and cormorants. The darter family came into its own about 25 to 30 million years ago, likely as they specialized in more ambush underwater hunting tactics. However, there were various prehistoric Anhingas, especially in the Americas where the family was very diverse. And they may have had different lifestyles than our modern Anhingas based on their body sizes, ranging from very small to very large. The Anhinga family likely started in the southern hemisphere, specifically Australia or South Asia, as that is where the oldest fossils are found. Anhingas made it to the Americas at least 18 million years ago, likely via the Bering Land Bridge. Anhingas likely reached Africa around 10 million years ago, as that's when the sister species, the Oriental darter and African darter, differentiate. So that's it on the 4 darter species. I covered 4 species in one episode. It made it easy that really the American Anhinga is the only one that's like really well researched. The other 3, like, there's not much information about. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed the episode. Sorry for the sporadic release schedule. I'll try to go back to every month, who knew having a baby would be so hard? And then, as you all know, I'm a doctor, and the lifestyle, the schedule, the patients, all that kind of stuff can be a little demanding sometimes. I do love it, though, and I do love making the show for you guys. Please write in. Please send me bird notes. Let me know what you think of the show. Let me know if you want free stickers. Hell, if you send me a bird watch, I'll probably send you a t-shirt. Just ask me. But as always, stay dirty, fellow birdies. Dirty Bird Podcast is brought to you by me, John, with my rotating panel of guests and co-hosts. Thanks for being on the show, everybody. The Dirty Bird theme song is by Ricky Pistone. Check out his groovy and hilarious music videos on YouTube. The outro music you're listening to right now is a song New York Redneck by the Sidewalk Slammers. Check them out wherever you get your music. The Dirty Bird Podcast logo is by the very talented TJ Ranoski. And of course, a shout out to my beautiful wife, Lauren, who created my original logo. Check out the show notes for this episode for a full list of credits for any bird calls or sounds used in the episode. Thanks for listening.
At the track, drive into Brooklyn, ain't never coming back. Tim's on the ground in the concrete jungle. I might get into a little rumble.